It was another ugly game for the Mets, losing today to the Nationals, finishing up a rough 4-9 stretch versus some lesser opponents. They're now 20-22 on the year. Tony, you look at this team now, they're a quarter of the way through. How do you evaluate them at this point in the season?
Well, it hasn't been great, Sal. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it, and I'm not going to bury a team as we sit here in mid-May, but there's a lot of things that are not just concerning because of the record, but concerning because you can see how they can continue into the summer. Specifically, the starting pitcher. We've talked about it on this show a lot, and Justin Verlander just came back and was great, and you hope he will continue to be great. But if that's going to be the only thing for this team, it's not enough. I'm sorry, it's just not. So you need a lot more from Max Scherzer. Maybe this was his last start, but maybe not. You need a lot more from everyone else in the rotation. And if you're not going to start getting that, then whatever you do at the deadline also isn't going to be enough. So this isn't doom and gloom. They can't come back from this, but I have some major concerns about that starting pitching. And the last time Billy Eppler spoke publicly, he talked about dividing the season into thirds. There's that first third where you evaluate what you have, the second third where you take action, and the third third where you kind of see where you end up when all the pieces fall. We're getting now very close to that second third. So what is Billy Eppler going to do? What are the Mets going to do? Because right now this team hasn't shown a lot in terms of deserving that big deadline ad where you put all your chips into the middle and hurt yourself in years to come to go for it this year. They still can do that, but they got to play a lot better for that to be the case.
I think it's a really interesting point about the trade deadline because you're right. I think there's no reason to say a team can't come back from this particular record and go on to be a contending postseason team. The Mets are going to benefit from the expanded postseason and the fact that the National League is pretty weak right now. But I'm not sure what they should do. That if we're reaching the end of that first third where Billy Eppler is evaluating things, we're heading towards that second third where they're going to make moves. I don't know necessarily what kind of moves they can make because of how this team is constructed. It's interesting. It's hard to tell whether the bigger problem is the construction or the underperformance. You know what I mean? There are definitely guys on this team who are just straight up underperforming. Francisco Lindor is not this bad of a player. He will perform. Like I don't think signing Francisco Lindor to a big long-term contract was a bad move. That's not what's going wrong this year. But they're getting a lot of underperformance, and then there also are some team construction issues in the older pitching staff and the way maybe they went about the deadline last year. So it's a little the most concerning part. I think this is a great point, Tony. Is like what are they going to do at the deadline if they're still looking this bad? Because they didn't do a lot of the deadline last year and they were looking great.
If you combine the dedeadline last year and the deadline this year and the deadline maybe in 2 years, it still wouldn't be enough. They need the players that are here to do the job. Exactly. The encouraging thing, though, is 20-22, it feels like it's a lot worse than only 6 games back of the Braves. That feels like it's a lot worse as well. And you mentioned the expanded postseason. I know a lot of fans want to panic and go nuts and hear me yell and scream about this team. It's okay for now. It's been ugly, but it's way early to go nuts over this team, who I was surprised to actually look at the record and say, wow, 2022, it feels a lot worse than that because it has been ugly, especially over the stretch against bad teams.